Gary Cooper dated actresses in secret while married. Now we know why. Frank James Cooper was born on May 7, 1901, in Helena, Montana. His childhood was a blend of rugged Western life and a surprisingly refined English education. His father, Charles Henry Cooper, was a respected lawyer and later a justice of the Montana Supreme Court. His mother, Alice Cooper, was a sophisticated woman from England. When Frank was still young, his mother, concerned about his health and wanting him to receive a proper education, took him to England, where he was enrolled in a private boarding school. This period exposed him to a vastly different culture, instilling in him a sense of British reserve and politeness that would later mix intriguing with his Western upbringing. Returning to Montana, he attended high school in Helena, where he was a tall, quiet kid, already showing an interest in drawing and art. He also spent time on his family's ranch, developing a love for horses and the outdoors that would serve him well in his iconic Western roles. He was never particularly gregarious or comfortable as the center of attention. Instead, he possessed a natural shyness, a quiet introspection that would paradoxically become part of his magnetic screen presence. After high school, he attended Grinnell College in Iowa for a few years before health problems forced him to return to Montana. His early aspirations were not centered on acting. He hoped to become an artist, a cartoonist for a newspaper. This dream led him to California in the early 1920s, hoping to find work in the burgeoning art scene. However, finding steady work as an artist proved difficult, and like many hopefuls in Los Angeles, he found himself needing to make ends meet. The film industry was booming, and opportunities for quick cash existed for young men who could ride a horse and looked decent on camera. Cooper, tall and comfortable around horses from his Montana ranch days, began working as a film extra, often in westerns. It was simply a way to earn $5 a day, enough to get by. He was a face in the crowd, a cowboy riding across the background, learning the basics of filmmaking by observation. He had no formal acting training, no burning desire to be a star initially. Fate, driven by necessity, pushed him towards the camera. He started getting slightly larger bit parts, then small speaking roles as the silent era transitioned towards sound. What he lacked in theatrical training, he made up for with a natural authenticity and an understated screen presence. The camera loved him. His reserved nature, coupled with his striking looks and physical grace, translated into a unique charisma on screen. He wasn't a flamboyant actor. He was real, reacting to situations with believable stillness and quiet intensity. This naturalistic style, developed in the silent era and perfected in the early talkies, would become his trademark, the strong, silent type. His early career wasn't an overnight explosion, but a steady build, fueled by talent, hard work, and a distinctive presence that set him apart. He was learning on the job, adapting his quiet nature into a powerful on-screen persona. The journey from a struggling artist taking extra work for cash to a rising star was underway, driven by a combination of chance, necessity, and an undeniable connection with the movie camera. He was on his way to becoming a star, and the public was beginning to fall for the authentic, quiet strength he projected. The pivotal moment that solidified Gary Cooper's transition from a promising leading man to a bona fide star and defined his screen persona for decades came with the advent of sound. While many silent actors struggled, Cooper's understated style thrived. His first talking film, The Virginian, released in 1929, was a Western that allowed him to bring his natural, quiet intensity to a role that perfectly suited him. As the taciturn, honorable cowboy, he delivered lines with a natural rhythm and a resonant voice that audiences found incredibly appealing. The film was a massive hit, and Gary Cooper became the iconic screen cowboy, the personification of the Western hero. From that point on, his career trajectory soared. The 1930s and 40s were his golden age. He starred in a string of critically acclaimed and hugely popular films across various genres, proving he was far more than just a Western star. He effortlessly transitioned from action and adventure to sophisticated comedy and powerful drama. Films like Frank Capra's social commentary Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 1936, where he played an innocent man navigating the corruption of the big city, showcased his ability to portray integrity and quiet dignity. He earned his first Academy Award for Best Actor for his portrayal of the real-life war hero in Sergeant York, 1941, a performance that cemented his image as the quintessential American patriot. Another Oscar followed for his iconic role as the conflicted sheriff in the classic Western High Noon, 1952, a performance of quiet desperation and moral courage that remains one of his most celebrated. Other landmark films included A Farewell to Arms, 1932, The Pride of the Yankees, 1942, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, 1943. In these films, he often played men of principle, facing difficult choices, embodying a sense of justice and quiet heroism. His acting style was naturalistic, relying on expression and reaction rather than overt theatricality. He was believable, relatable, and exuded an aura of inherent goodness and strength that made him the perfect vehicle for these heroic roles. Gary Cooper became one of the biggest stars in the world, a top box office draw, commanding enormous salaries. His public image was that of the ideal American man, honest, courageous, down to earth despite his fame, and possessing an effortless, masculine charm. He was seen as the embodiment of the virtues he portrayed on screen. This image was carefully cultivated by the studios and reinforced by his generally quiet demeanor in public. He wasn't flashy or attention-seeking off-screen, which further enhanced the perception of his authenticity. Yet, the man behind the icon was, in some ways, very different from the characters he played. While he possessed a core decency, he was also a complex individual, still somewhat shy and uncomfortable with the constant attention. He preferred spending time outdoors, hunting and fishing, rather than attending lavish Hollywood parties. This contrast between the towering screen hero and the reserved, private man only added to his allure for the public, solidifying his image as genuinely humble and grounded. He was at the zenith of his career, revered and admired by millions. But as with many figures placed on such a high pedestal, the reality of his private life was far more intricate and, as it turns out, harbored secrets that contradicted the very image that made him a legend. The stage was set for the exploration of the hidden Gary Cooper. In 1933, at the age of 32, Gary Cooper married Veronica "Rocky" Balfe. Rocky came from a wealthy, prominent New York family and was a strikingly beautiful, sophisticated, and intelligent woman. She had connections to the arts and high society. Their meeting and subsequent marriage brought together the quiet Western star and a woman from a completely different, more privileged world. For the public, their marriage presented an image of stability and classic Hollywood romance. Rocky was seen as the elegant, grounded wife who provided a steady anchor for the famous actor. The arrival of their daughter, Maria, in 1937, further solidified the image of the happy, conventional Hollywood family. This public perception of a stable, enduring marriage became intertwined with Cooper's on-screen image of reliability and moral uprightness. However, maintaining this image of marital bliss was, at times, a significant challenge. Even after his marriage to Rocky, Gary Cooper's reputation as a ladies' man did not disappear. He was incredibly attractive, had a quiet magnetism that women found irresistible, and worked in an environment, Hollywood, where temptation and opportunity were constant companions. The film sets themselves were breeding grounds for intense, albeit sometimes fleeting, relationships, working closely with beautiful, talented actresses, often in romantic storylines, created a unique dynamic ripe for off-screen chemistry. While the public marriage to Rocky was the official narrative, Gary Cooper's private life was reportedly far less constrained. There were relationships that became public knowledge during his marriage, causing considerable scandal and strain on his marriage. The most famous was his passionate, long-running affair with actress Patricia Neal in the late 1940s and early 1950s. This relationship was serious enough to lead to a temporary separation from Rocky and became tabloid fodder, forcing Cooper to confront the public consequences of his private actions. While this affair was not secret, its existence within the context of his marriage highlighted the underlying instability and foreshadowed the discussion of even more discreet entanglements. The public affair with Patricia Neal eventually ended, and Cooper reconciled with Rocky, returning to the outward appearance of a stable marriage. But according to biographers and those within his social circle, the Patricia Neal affair was not an isolated incident in terms of infidelity. It was simply the most prominent one that spilled into the public domain during his marriage. There were reportedly others, relationships that were more carefully hidden, affairs conducted with a greater degree of secrecy, often with actresses he worked with or women within the Hollywood orbit. So, while the world saw Gary Cooper as the devoted husband and father, the reality was more complex. His marriage to Rocky, despite its duration, reportedly faced challenges, periods of distance, and perhaps fundamental differences in personality or expectations. And it was within the confines of this long-term marriage that Gary Cooper reportedly pursued numerous other relationships. This raises the central compelling question: why? Why would a man who projected such a strong image of integrity, a man who had a seemingly stable family life, engage in repeated, secret infidelities? This is the core drama, the hidden truth we must explore. The secret that was carefully guarded throughout Gary Cooper's legendary career, a secret that stands in stark contrast to his public image, is the consistent pattern of him dating actresses in secret while married to Veronica "Rocky" Balfe. This wasn't a single mistake or a brief lapse. It was, according to numerous credible biographies and accounts, a recurring behavior throughout much of his marriage, revealing a hidden, more complex side to the man behind the stoic hero. Is why? Why did Gary Cooper, the symbol of quiet strength and moral uprightness, repeatedly engage in secret affairs while married? The answer, pieced together from the man's personality, the pressures of his environment, and the dynamics of his personal life, is likely multifaceted and deeply human. Firstly, let's consider the man himself. While his screen persona was stoic, Gary Cooper was reportedly a man of quiet intensity and, crucially, possessed an almost effortless charm that women found incredibly attractive, despite his shyness, or perhaps because of the intriguing contrast it created. He was highly sought after. There's a school of thought that suggests the strong, silent type on screen masked a certain restlessness or a search for validation and connection in his private life. His reserved nature might have made deep emotional intimacy within his marriage challenging at times, leading him to seek fleeting but intense connections elsewhere. Then, there was the environment. Hollywood in its golden age was a hotbed of opportunity and temptation. Film sets often required actors to spend weeks or months working closely together, building intense on-screen chemistry that could easily spill over into real life. The constant flattery, the adoration from co-stars and fans, and the sheer proximity to beautiful, talented women created a unique atmosphere. For a man like Cooper, admired and desired by so many, resisting temptation would have required an almost superhuman level of discipline. His marriage to Rocky, while long-lasting, reportedly had its challenges. Rocky was a strong personality, intelligent and connected, but also reportedly could be controlling or possessive. Cooper, with his quiet, independent streak, and his love for the more rugged, simple pursuits of hunting and fishing, sometimes seemed ill-suited to the demanding, social world Rocky inhabited. The very public, messy affair with Patricia Neal is a clear indicator that their marriage was far from a fairy tale and involved significant periods of conflict and separation. It's plausible that even during periods when they were together, underlying issues or emotional distance existed, leading Cooper to seek comfort, excitement, or validation outside the marriage. The why could partly be found in the complexities and potential dissatisfactions within the marital bond itself. Furthermore, there's the immense pressure of maintaining the Gary Cooper image. He was the moral center of so many films, the symbol of integrity. Living up to that ideal, both on screen and off, must have been an enormous burden. Perhaps the secret affairs were a form of rebellion, a way for the private man to escape the confines of the perfect image he was expected to uphold. It was a hidden life where he could shed the weight of the hero persona and simply be a man with desires and flaws, away from public judgment. Now, let's delve into some of the specific secret relationships Gary Cooper is reported to have had while married. It's crucial to preface this by stating that these accounts come from biographies, memoirs of contemporaries, and long-standing industry whispers. The level of concrete proof varies, but the pattern is widely discussed in credible sources. While some of his famous premarital affairs established his reputation as a ladies' man before marriage, that behavior reportedly continued. For instance, early in his marriage, Cooper was rumored to have had an intense but brief affair with the legendary Marlene Dietrich while filming Desire 1936. Both were enormous stars, exuding charisma, and the chemistry on screen was palpable. Such affairs were often facilitated by studios turning a blind eye as long as they remained discreet, valuing their stars' box office appeal above all else. The key was keeping it a secret. Perhaps the most persistent rumors, outside of the confirmed Patricia Neal affair, involve Grace Kelly. While filming High Noon 1952, when Cooper was married to Rocky and in his early 50s while Kelly was in her early 20s, their on-screen chemistry was undeniable. Biographers and Hollywood lore are rife with speculation about a private relationship between them during this time. Accounts suggest a powerful mutual attraction. While harder to definitively prove than the Neal affair, the whispers among those who knew them at the time were strong, pointing to secret meetings and a deep, though discreet, connection. This alleged affair occurred during a period when Cooper's marriage was reportedly still fragile, even after the initial fallout from the Neal scandal. Other actresses' names have been linked to Cooper in biographies, suggesting a pattern of relationships blossoming on film sets or within his social circle during his marriage. These were often kept far more under wraps than the high-profile Neal affair. They represent the core of the secret dating life referenced in the title. The details of these relationships are often murky, based on fragments of information, diary entries, or retrospective accounts, but collectively, they build a picture of a man who, despite his public image and marital status, regularly sought romantic or intimate connections outside his marriage. The secrecy surrounding these affairs was paramount. Clandestine meetings in private homes, discreet dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants, using trusted friends to pass messages, traveling separately to meet up elsewhere, these were the tactics employed. Both Cooper and the actresses involved had careers and reputations to protect. The studio system, while perhaps aware of the rumors, had a vested interest in keeping their star's image clean. Publicity departments worked hard to quash gossip and present a picture of conventional normalcy, especially for someone like Cooper, whose appeal was so tied to his perceived uprightness. The weight of maintaining this secrecy, the constant fear of discovery, must have added immense stress to Cooper's life. A hidden burden carried beneath the easy smile and confident demeanor he displayed publicly. So, the why behind Gary Cooper dating actresses in secret while married is likely a confluence of factors: his inherent magnetism and the opportunities it created, the emotionally complex environment of Hollywood, potential issues within his marriage to Rocky, the pressure of living up to his iconic image, and perhaps a fundamental part of his personality that sought connection or validation in multiple relationships. It wasn't a simple case of malice or disrespect, it was the complicated reality of a human being navigating fame, marriage, and personal desires in an era that demanded perfect conformity while simultaneously creating the conditions for secretive rebellion. These secret affairs were the cracks in the facade, the hidden truths of a legend. In the years following the intense period of his public affair with Patricia Neal and his subsequent reconciliation with Rocky, Gary Cooper continued his career, starring in films and maintaining his status as a major star. albeit one now in his 50s. His marriage to Rocky, despite the severe strain it had endured, reportedly entered a more stable phase after they reconciled. Rocky, a strong and resilient woman, stood by him, managing aspects of his life and often accompanying him. While the public drama seemed to subside, the scars of past infidelities likely remained. The intense, secret dating of earlier decades may have slowed, but the habits and the underlying complexities of his character didn't simply vanish. As the late 1950s approached, Cooper's health began to decline. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which later spread to his colon and lungs. True to his strong, silent persona, he reportedly faced his illness with quiet courage and dignity, fighting the disease privately, much like the battles his characters fought on screen. He continued working for as long as he could, portraying a quiet resilience that mirrored his most famous roles. His battle with cancer was kept relatively private for as long as possible, managed by his family and close circle. As his condition worsened, the public became more aware of his illness, but the full extent of his suffering was largely shielded from view. He spent his final months at home in California, surrounded by his family. Gary Cooper died on May 13, 1961, just 6 days after his 60th birthday. His death marked the passing of a true Hollywood titan, a man whose image had defined heroism for generations. The news was met with widespread grief and tributes from around the world, celebrating his unparalleled career and the enduring power of his screen presence. He was remembered as a legend, the embodiment of American virtues. His death brought an end to a life lived between immense public adulation and carefully guarded private struggles. The secrets of his personal life, while perhaps known to an inner circle, remained largely unknown to the millions who mourned him. The complexities of his marriage and his history of secret affairs remained, primarily confined to biographies and historical accounts that would emerge years later, slowly unveiling the human truth behind the myths. His death, while a tragic loss of a beloved star, also closed the chapter on the hidden life he had fought so hard to maintain. Gary Cooper's place in cinematic history is secure. He remains one of the most iconic and respected actors of all time, a symbol of integrity and strength on screen. His performances continue to inspire and captivate audiences, timeless portrayals of the heroic ideal. The image of the stoic, principled man stands as a powerful legacy. However, understanding the full story of Gary Cooper, including the revelation that he dated actresses in secret while married, adds a necessary layer of complexity to the legend. It reminds us that the heroes on screen are often complex, flawed human beings off-screen. The widely discussed instances of his infidelity, both public and secret, do not erase his on-screen achievements, but they add a crucial dimension to his personal narrative. The exploration of why he engaged in these secret affairs, linking it to his personality, the pressures of Hollywood, the dynamics of his marriage, and the burden of his public image, offers a more complete, more human portrait of the man. It shows that even the most outwardly virtuous figures can harbor private struggles and desires that contradict their public persona. His story is a powerful illustration of the pressure cooker that was old Hollywood, where maintaining a flawless image was paramount, often at the expense of living an authentic personal life. Knowing about the secret affairs and the probable reasons behind them doesn't necessarily diminish the heroism Gary Cooper portrayed on screen. Perhaps, in a way, it makes his performances even more compelling, hinting at a deeper, more complicated human experience beneath the stoic surface. The legend of Gary Cooper endures, not just as the perfect hero, but as a fascinating, perhaps troubled, man who lived a life of extraordinary fame and guarded secrets, his secret affairs while married, and the reasons why are a vital, often overlooked, part of the truth behind the icon. And that truth, like his greatest films, leaves a lasting, complex impression.